everyone, this is Kelly Janae, and you are watching Ethereal Ecology. I want to make a video about Chiron. Chiron, because I've been working very consciously with Chiron over the last couple of days, and let me tell you, this planetoid, planetary body, whatever you want to call it, has really helped me move through some very persistent wounds that I have been carrying and am working consciously with at this time. So the book that I'm reading on Chiron right now is this book, Chiron and the Healing Journey. It's a great book. Melanie Reinhart, she starts off with the myth of Chiron. She also talks about the planetary alignment of Chiron, where it is in the solar system. And I'll just tell you a little bit about that background. So Chiron is actually archetypally considered the wounded healer. And in myth, he's actually the son of Saturn, or the Kronos, father time, but Saturn abandoned him, and his mother also abandoned him. And so the son, Apollo, adopted Chiron, and Chiron became a very gifted artist, scholar, astrologer, all of the things, and teacher, and actually a healer as well. And one of his students at some point, there's many different sort of iterations of the story, but Hercules, or one of his students, actually shot him in the leg, in the ankle, and he could not heal from that wound. It was so painful that eventually he chose to trade his immortality for death. Then he got, constellated in the sky, in the constellation Centaurus, I believe. And so the centaur is the image of Chiron, where it's this balance and integration between the instinctual animal side of human, as well as the intellectual and the divine part of us that can consciously be aware of ourselves. And so that is what we're working with when we're working with Chiron, is this dichotomy, but also the integration of those two parts. In case you're not familiar with where Chiron is, it is between Saturn and Uranus. So really, it's in that sort of in-between liminal space between the inner planets, all the planets that we can see with our naked eye, and the outer planets, so Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and beyond. So Chiron is sort of like this conduit or this messenger between Saturn and Uranus, who, if you study astrology, have pretty disparate views of reality and different ways of operating. So we have Saturn, which is this energy of limitation and discipline and saying no and the rules and authority, things of that nature. Whereas Uranus is this impulse to be an individual. So as you can see, those two sort of agendas don't always mesh well, as you can see in society. And then also, as I'll talk about in this video, that dynamic can play out within our own selves, within our own psyches, where we can have this sort of struggle between the societal norms or fitting into society or structures that are already in place, while also honoring our individual selves. Because as we'll see, there's really no right answer. And instead of it being an either or, I'm either Saturnian or I'm either Uranian, and there's just going to have to be conflict. Or we can really integrate those two different parts together and create an integrated whole, which has the concept of both and instead of either or. So that's sort of a background of Chiron. I want to talk a little bit about my own personal experience. And I think this is going to be helpful for some of you out there who maybe are interested in astrology and are studying astrology, but want a little bit more concrete ways to understand how to utilize it in your daily life. So for me, my birth chart has been basically like a mirror that I can look into, and on any given day, as I change, as my perspective changes, I see something new and something different. And sometimes I will be working on my own internal processes and realize that there's some archetype or some impulse within me that's really struggling or that I want more information about. So recently I've kind of been working with my inner artist self, and I'm aware that my Chiron is in the 5th house, which is sort of that place of artistic expression, playfulness, creativity, sensuality. And my Chiron is there in Virgo, of all things. So I've got a little bit of a struggle around being able to express myself artistically. So I bought that book because I was like, okay, it's time for me to look into Chiron because this is something I really want to work with right now. I realized too that something I hadn't seen before in my birth chart, that I have an exact quincunx between my Sun in Aquarius in the 10th house and my Chiron in Virgo in the 5th house. So quincunxes are really these aspects where two planets or planetary bodies, or signs for that matter, really don't see each other very well. They just really don't quite get each other. And this is an exact quincunx. I mean, it's like 25 degrees, 25 degrees. So it is like, So what I have going on here is this sort of dynamic within my own self where there's this sort of feeling like I can't express myself. There's a limitation, and the limitation is really coming from this quincunx. It's coming from a lot of things, definitely. There's more than just this. But what I've been consciously working with is this connection to that sun. And in traditional astrology, the sun can often represent the father. And I've realized during this period of time that the horoscope, the birth chart, is actually an incredible way to work with our internal family system. Of course, we have external family problems. We all grow up and have this wounded child in us that did not get everything that it needed because our parents are human just like us, and we co-created this life with spirit so that we could learn specific lessons. And so I've realized that my limitations, my artistic limitations, a lot of that is really tied into a struggle with my career and this idea of who I should be in the world, which a lot of that I feel I perceived that as coming from my father and from this sort of also my mother, but this very like masculine societal structure of this is what you should be doing. You should be helping people, and you're very smart and you're very wise, so make sure you do engineering and math, and and so I've really put a lot of energy into that part of my life. And I have a job now that like anybody who's anybody would be like, what? That's an amazing job. And yes, it is. But I am finding that this rebellious Chiron, like this rebellious artistic nature is like, what about me? What about me? I'm talented too. And so I found myself rejecting the engineer part of myself and really identifying more with this artistic side of myself. And this is causing a lot of inner conflict for me where I'm like, I'm just done. I'm going to quit my job. I got to move on. And that's that either or really extreme black and white manifestation, right, of this inner conflict. And so that, ding, 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 is a very good indication that perhaps we're working with Chiron stuff, is when we are stuck in between and it feels like a war and like it can't quite get fixed and it's been a problem persistently for so long. And there you go. It's the wounded healer. There's just something that we can't quite get right, but we can as we work to heal those parts of us within ourselves, because I'm not going to go out of my way and go to my dad and say, hey, you didn't believe in my artist self. No, it has nothing to do with my dad. It has nothing to do with my mom. It has nothing to do with my boss. It has everything to do with my internal dialogue and my internal relationships between my father or my boss inside and my artist or my wounded child. So those parts of me really need an integration. And I've been doing that. That's what I've been doing. I've been consciously having conversations with those parts of myself, just literally talking to myself as if I'm talking to those parts of me, and also allowing those parts of me to have conversations with each other and to tell each other what each of them need to know. And I've found that like this is really allowing me to tap into more peace within myself. I've done enough internal healing work to know that when we work on something inside of ourselves, the external world then changes in response to our own dynamics within ourselves. So all those belief images that I'm not valued as an artist, or that I could never I will never succeed if I take on creative projects in the world. All those beliefs are not true. So yeah, I just wanted to share this example of how working with Chiron, the wounded healer in our birth chart, can really be a powerful way to get in touch with those parts of ourselves that maybe we neglect or need a little bit more attention, and doing so in a way that is not destructive in our own lives. Because a lot of times it seems, I'm not done with this book, but, having worked with Chiron consciously now and realizing that I've been working with Chiron actually a lot in my life, especially as I'm going into the healing profession, and this happens to be my passion and drive in life at this point, is that there's this tendency to want to destroy everything in order to preserve this wound, to have this wound be healed, and it hurts so bad, and so I'm willing to just do whatever, but I don't need to quit my job and cause all other kinds of problems in order to learn the lesson that needs to be learned, which is just self-love. It all comes back to self-love. And at the end of the day, I was doing some meditation on this. This is why I love astrology, because there's no end to how much wisdom there is in the birth chart. But our birth charts are essentially a unified whole. It is a picture of a unified whole. And when I really tune into all those different parts of myself, I'm tuning into the inner mother, the moon, Mars, this like warrior energy, or Chiron and the sun, or Saturn, Jupiter, whomever. Even if they're at squares with each other, or quincunxes, or trines, or whatever their alliances are, I know that each of those planets, each of those parts of me, their ultimate goal and their ultimate desire and wish is for me, the unified whole, to thrive. I know this for a fact. I can feel it. I can feel it and I can sense it. And my relationship with the divine, really, I can feel it in the birth chart as well, where all of these planets are actually perfectly aligned for our souls to thrive. And of course, it feels sometimes like suffering and like a curse, but the curse is the blessing and the suffering is the gift. I think any of us who've lived consciously enough for long enough know this for a fact. And so, yeah, I encourage all of you to work with those parts of yourself and to really acknowledge that we may feel like we have separate parts of ourselves, and we do, and that's like sort of the magic of being a human, is we are aware that we are not just one thing. We are many things, unified. We are one, but in this form, we are really playing the game of harmonizing our many different sides of self into a unified whole. And so Chiron is really, really a helpful tool for learning how to do that, I feel like. Yeah, and also Chiron has a 50-year cycle, which I think is very profound, because 50 years in this world is considered like a midlife crisis time. And yeah, all of that Chiron stuff, that if you haven't really dealt with it up to that point, it's going to come to a head around that time no matter what. All right, well, I hope this was helpful, and yeah, feel free to share any sort of information about how you work with your Chiron. Feel free to reach out to me as well if you are wondering about your birth chart and any of these things. I would love to chat and talk through it a little bit more. You can email me, kelly@ethereal-ecology.com. It's in the show notes as well, my contact info. Go to etherealecology.com, check it out, and I love you all so very much. Peace out, star children.